Innovation to help address the climate crisis. I am Dr. Tia Kansara from Replenish Earth. Replenish is about closing the gap between net zero and net positive. We've been spending a huge amount of our time trying to explore what net positive means, regeneration means. And for me, it started when I was doing my PhD. I happened to be in the Emirates. And I looked at the Masdar city, zero carbon, zero waste, and I thought, whoa, that is cool. What does it mean to live a sustainable lifestyle in a smart city? What does it mean to design technology that is net zero? What does it mean to bring absolutely everything on site from somewhere else and not from your back garden? Is it net zero, was the question. Is it a good impact on the environment? And so the beginning of this entire journey for me started in 2008, where I started to question net zero. Zero carbon, zero waste. Zero. Is it zero impact? Question mark. So when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and I was in the room when a variety of different academics were talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, we were curious whether sustainability was actually maintaining the status quo. Was it really about regulating, continuing that one process? Should it be that the next set of goals are going to be regenerative development goals? Is it going to be a positive impact on the environment? Today, I am so excited because regeneration is at the center of our debate. It's an opportunity to innovate. It's an opportunity to bring different people together on an entire different stream, different disciplines, to talk about this one topic. Before I begin, we are going to have a mindfulness practice with Francis. Francis Gagliardi is a Venezuelan pedagogue. If I can have Francis at the front. She's a coach and a musician who works with music and the arts for social development. Today she'll be creating a beautiful space for us, a moment to drop in. I'm not going to share anything more. I'm going to hand it over to her.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the space. So, my name is Francis Gagliardi, and I know you're not in the mood for singing, maybe, but I will bring a little bit of music to the session and a little bit of singing, because this will be our way to stop from the chaos that is happening outside, and even we can get it from inside. So this is a space for you. This is what I will do. I will provide you with a space to stop and to connect with yourselves, to connect with your voices, and to connect with your community. So I created a mantra with an Egyptian artist. Her name is Noha Fikri. And we composed this mantra that seeks to convey a message of urgency to take action, but knowing that we have to act together. And I'm here representing the Community Art Network that joined forces with the BMW Foundation to create these spaces for you to see the power of art and how we can address difficult topics, but with in a different way. In this case, with music. So right now, we're going to look at a video where Noha is going to sing the mantra for us, because half of the mantra will be in Arabic and the other half will be in English. And in the end, we're going to sing it together. Don't worry, I will guide you through, I will help you, and I promise to be kind and take care of you.
أرضي أرضي وأرضك دادي هي مسؤوليتي الأرض بتنادي. Life is our mission and the time is now. Earth is the location, let's all act right now.
So, thank you very much. She is here with us because she cannot be here present at this moment. But it is our moment to sing. And I will kindly ask you to please stand up. First, let's take a deep breath, because we haven't had so many times during these days to stop and breathe. So let's breath, exhale. Imagine that you're sending the air to your belly. Once again. And now, you'll inhale, but you will hum whichever sound that you can, okay? Let's inhale, and let's hum. Once again. Very nice. And now let's say ah. And let's go a bit higher. That was amazing. Once again. You're doing great. But so many beautiful voices here. A bit higher. And one more. Last one. Yes, this is our pitch. So we will have here right now the lyrics of the mantra, and I will give you some tips. These are not the lyrics, not so far, but I will give you some tips to pronounce. My Arabic is not good. I don't speak Arabic. This is why we had an artist. But I will give you the tricks that she gave me. Hope we can have the lyrics here. But basically, the tricks are, every time we have an A, we have to produce a sound, like A. And we are going to roll our R's, like ardi. Yes, let's try this word out. Ardi. Ardi. And we still have the slide, so let's continue. Ardi, ardiu. Ardi, ardiu. Ardegdedi, with a G. Ardegdedi. Ardegdedi. Yeah, good. I mean, it sounds good to me. I don't know if we're honoring the language, but I hope so. And the next part is Ardeg. Egg daddy. Ardi, ardi, ardeg daddy. Ardeg daddy. Thank you very much. And, well, let's start learning the melody. Very good. Let's try, repeat after me. Very nice. Good. Follow my hand. Trust me. 3 and very nice. Next part will be like this. Let's go. And then we again. Nice. You're fast learners. So let's try one more time. Everything. 3 and great. And the next part is and the last part. So, I know we're running out of time. Some people have some QR codes, so if you can go with some people who already have the lyrics, let's try to read them and let's sing them together, okay? 1, 2, 3, and أرضي أرضي وأرضك دادي هي مسؤوليتي الأرض بتنادي. Life is our mission and the time is now. Earth is the location. Let's all act right now. Thank you very much for everything. I hope you enjoyed it. And sorry for the technical difficulties.
Well, that was incredible. I bet you didn't think you'd be waking up today and doing any singing. But next up, we've got Professor Rockström. Come and join me on the stage, please. Yeah. Right, Professor. This is your moment to shine.
Moment to sing.
Moment to sing, moment to shine. If this isn't working, I'll get you another one.
It's okay.
Yes,
I think it works.
brilliant. So I hear that you've got some thoughts on regenerative and climate crisis and planetary boundaries.
I don't have any thoughts. I have a lot of scientific facts
Ooh,
to
I
share
like
with
it.
you.
Is there some magic in there as well?
No magic. It's just straightforward. And, you know, it's been on the table for quite some time, but it tends to be neglected that among the 100 or so IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change scenarios that takes us to a safe landing, well below 2 degrees Celsius and 1.5, it does follow the carbon law. It follows the mitigation pathway that everyone is, or at least most policymakers recognize, you know, bending the global curve of emissions and cutting emissions by half every decade to have the net zero world economy by 2050. This is the exponential journey of coal, oil, and natural gas. What is neglected is the fact that even if we do that, even if we are so incredibly successful, we will still crash through 1.5 because we're underestimating the fact that we need to have a buildup of carbon in nature, the regenerative component. And these numbers are staggering in the safe landing scenarios. The global food system, which today emits 12.5 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year, 25% of our annual emissions globally, needs to transition to a 0 point by 2030 and become a carbon absorption system by 2040 at a level of 5 gigatons per year, and by 2050, 10 gigatons per year. 10 gigatons is 25% of global emissions. This is a global food system revolution. It's a regenerative transformation, which is a necessity for a safe landing. But not even that is enough, because the models also assume that nature will stay intact. So that land ecosystems will continue to absorb 25% of emissions, and that the ocean marine ecosystems will continue to absorb another 25%. So, you know, a safe landing for humanity is a global sustainability transformation, which is regenerative across carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, biodiversity, land, fresh water, and pollutants and chemicals, all the planetary boundaries. And you cannot take one of them away without losing. So this is the reality we're in, and that's what is such a big concern when we talk about voluntary carbon markets, we talk about offsetting. There is no offsetting room. Actually, net zero is a necessity, but it's only a necessity if we recognize that everything has to be additional. You do phase out of fossil fuels, plus building nature, plus conserving and protecting. You have to have additionalities right through. And of course, the good news is, which, you know, with Sandrine and colleagues at the Club of Rome, we're working so heavily in the Earth for All initiative, is that we have the scalable solutions. We know actually how to do this. It's not fantasy or theory or magic. It is actually getting on with the work of practices that we actually have in the toolbox. But it's a failure if we think that we have one silver bullet in one area and try to compensate it through, you know, good measures in nature climate solutions as just a way of camouflaging our inability to move fast on phase out of fossil fuels.
I feel as if there is this entire infrastructure out there, and somehow we've got to bring that to bridge what we want in the future. So we've got a vision of where we want to go. We've got a status quo, right? That's the way that it's always been. These are the formulas that we use for, you know, building buildings, for example, or we've got these methodologies of how we'd like to create regenerative eco-solutions. However, there's that what it is, what it's always been, and it should be, to what it can be and what we can innovate it as. So you've got this status quo and growth mindset, and the two have to come together. In the world of the scientist who is looking at these dark, miserable stats, where's the hope? Where's the determination? Where is it that innovation can play a part? How do you encourage the heart of the scientist?
Well, I would say that there are at least three entry points to finding that light in the tunnel. Number one is actually that it isn't black, dark doom, and then you have this vision far, far away. There's a lot of messiness in between. And I would even argue that the current energy crisis in the world and all the, we're sitting in a very, very edgy point in the world today where you have equal amount of negative news as you have of positive news. And that's typically what you find in revolutions, in transformations, that it's very messy. And right now we're in that gauntlet phase of messiness. And so that is one part of the good news, that my advice to all policymakers right now is sit still in the boat, stay on track, because in messy situations one has to be kind of cold-minded. The second piece is that we have quite a lot of evidence from empirical transitions that when you have a large enough minority, they can tip the scales of the quite inert status quo dominated majorities. So when communities of innovation reach 20% of any market or society or voice, they tend to be so powerful, particularly if they have an attractive message. And we have an attractive message because we know that the transition to a zero carbon future is healthier, more secure, more resilient, more attractive. They can tip the logic of the majority. So I think that is also something which is quite promising. And then the third and final is that we see more and more evidence of the economic parity between regenerative solutions can compete on equal grounds with unsustainable solutions, despite the fact that they're not even factoring in their costs. So we have the economics with us, we have large enough minorities that can tip the majorities, and it's a messy, it's not as if we are, I would say, very close to that tipping point, which can make us turn rapidly.
One of the things that Professor Sylvia Earle said to you last year, and was also at the UN Pavilion, was that we are at a turning point. The tipping point feels as if we're going to drop off the side, but the turning point feels as if we're really at that point of making that decision. Sitting in the chaos feels uncomfortable. Sitting in the place where you do not know what's going to happen next is uncomfortable. And I think that moment of silence is right now that we shift the gaze. So I'm going to invite two more people, Ineza Umuhoza Grace, co-founder, Loss and Damage Youth Coalition, on the stage, if she's here. And also Sandrine Dixson-Declève, co-president of the Club of Rome. Grab a microphone. Can we have another microphone? So it's been absolutely wonderful to have this opportunity to take very, very different perspectives. So we've got the academic perspective, we've got innovation, we've got institutional knowledge and understanding of policy. What do the both of you feel about this topic? Because it is such a deep dive into action for regenerative means. Where do you begin, and how are you doing it? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. So for me, I think the fact is that we need to be clear in the sense that science speak one word. We don't have to undermine what it's saying. And now more than ever now, even on the community side, the reality speak in the same language as the science. So if we want policymakers to make decisions, we also need to amplify the fact of making the general public being able to hold leaders accountable by being able to speak with the scientific terms. And that's what I have right now.
I love the infrastructural challenges that you mentioned to me last time when we were in the call. Can you share that a little bit with the audience? How is it that when you're doing the work that you're doing back at home, what is it that you're facing? Because everyone's got very different challenges. And it's also really good to know where it is that we're coming from.
In my context, I'm part of the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition, which is a coalition of more than 400 young people aiming to advocate for the need to address climate change impact. And what we are demanding is loss and damage finance, for example. And when we make that statement, most of the time what we hear from developed country is more on trying to increase the process, like delaying on making a commitment. So the challenge we are facing is to be able to make a proper statement in terms of allowing like activate the political momentum inside the negotiation or inside the policy, because everything outside the pressure is good, but inside the pressure is not right. And what we are trying to put forward is to ensure that young people are able to drive the research, drive the policy-driven action, but also being able to be being to amplify their community-led action on the ground. And this is possible, especially when you look for a country like Rwanda that has a circular green economy that's a pillar for economic development, but it's all linked with the how the environment is going to be stable. And now we are all into green investment, trying to ensure that private sector are invited, public sector are invited, and even young people are active stakeholders. So those are the countries where I think youth have a kind of a better foundation on how they can link the science and action, but also speak on the fact that we can be able to protect our future, because otherwise we don't see any future in our eyes.
I think that's that thing between, I may have hope, but it's the determination that really gets me going, right? Like, having hope is one thing. To what degree, and over to you, Sandrine, to what degree does industry and policy making address and adopt these innovative means to kind of like channel this sort of regenerative movement? How do you feel that gap is being closed?
So I think it very much depends on the country, and it very much depends on the way in which the policy ecosystem has been set up. But let me take a step back. I want to start with language. I think we really have to get better at defining what regenerative looks like. So that's the first. The second is the whole net zero conversation. From the very beginning, when Johan and I started working together, and other scientists and economists, and the beauty of the scientific community now is that we're all increasingly aligned behind the fact that actually we will have social tipping points before we even have greater environmental tipping points. So what does that mean when you talk about regenerative, and what does that mean when you talk about innovation? Well, that means that you need to take into consideration poverty and inequality as much as you take into consideration innovative processes, because we get so hung up on a technocratic understanding of what innovation actually means. But it's not the technology that's going to save us. It's the capital flows going in the right place, ensuring that we underpin the total transition of our economies and our financial structure so that they service people, planet, and prosperity at the same time. And that is fundamental. And what does that look like? So that is, as Johan has referred to, and we've been working on Earth for All, a Survival Guide for Humanity, looks like 5 key turnarounds, but that are systemic in approach. I mean, this is the real feedback loop process, which is you look at poverty, you look at inequality, you look at empowerment of the youth, empowerment of women, and then you look at energy and food, which are the underbelly of survival. But to get to that underbelly, and therefore the regenerative solutions, regenerative agriculture, ensuring that we shift towards renewables 3 times the pace that we are at now every single year, as well as energy efficiency, you have to take into consideration the vulnerabilities in our society. Now, innovation with regard to the vulnerabilities means that it's not just inequality between the North and the South, it's the growing inequality within the North and the South as well. It's the way in which we address universal basic dividend or universal basic income. It's the way we address debt cancellation, because the South will continue to only pay off the interest or the trade deficit before they can even start to invest in what truly matters and innovate. So we have to completely rethink our structures. For me, there is a totally dysfunctional structure and underbelly, which is the infrastructure that we have right now, which is the economic and the financial systems, do not work. And maybe I will end with, what is that light at the end of the tunnel? We have to create it. What does it look like? It looks like a well-being economy with indicators that actually place a value on what matters, environmental, social, and economic, and that we definancialize our economy, which means we get back to the needs, the real economic services that are going to enable people to have that access to food and to energy.
Absolutely. I think I see Professor Johan making some notes, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this, because of course we've got the challenges, the economic evolution, we've got the spirit of the land now included and inclusive in the debate. We've got even more clarity on the entire, communication network between Uganda to India to, Sweden to Germany. Like, we've got capabilities we never thought we'd have.
Now, to begin with, we have still quite a lot of work to do, as Sandrine points out, to define regenerative, but I think we're on a good way, and I think we can do that in a way that can also make it operational both in governance and in the private sector for finance. And when it comes to how to deal with accelerating and scaling, I think the number one challenge for all of us has to do with the narrative, but it has to be a narrative that reaches the masses, that reaches well beyond the 40,000 of us who are here at the COP. And the only way to do that is to prove that the investments in regenerative solutions across nature and physics are socially and economically attractive. And how do we do that? Well, one very first step is to internalize all the real costs of doing damage to everything that is the life support for humans. So a price on carbon, a price on destroying diversity, a price on all forms of damage. So that's one step in this direction. The second is, of course, to remove all the subsidies that we're plowing in to just keep ourselves in the status quo that we discussed. And the third is to put, as Sandrine points out, a new measure of human well-being. Because if we measure the value of all the positives of clean air and positive, healthy, resilient nature, we have another type of accounting. And of course, that's a big step to reach that account. And we cannot do that with the urgency we're in right now. So you have to do things in step by step. And in the short term, get rid of subsidies, factor in a price on carbon, factor in a price and value on nature capital, and then move towards the inclusive well-being pathways. I think one has to stagger things, because if we ask for the perfect outcome up front, we will never really make progress.
It's almost as if you're starting with this perfect in mind, right? There's a difference between a vision and reality. And I think the kind of coming together of that is bridging those that are doing some amazing work. So Phillippe, I'm looking at you because I'm inviting you on stage. Come on up. Phillippe, Lubomila, and Lena are examples of incredible solutions. So Lena, co-founding partner of Planet A Ventures, Lubomila Jordanova, founder of Plan A, Phillippe Birker, co-founder of Climate Farmers. We've got people on stage that are almost representative of these shifts. Phillippe, I'm going to start with you. I would absolutely love to know, what is it that you're doing to provide this kind of imagination into reality?
Sure. I think it builds up perfectly on what
Louder.
was saying, because we work with farmers, and we're helping farmers in the European Union to transition towards regenerative agriculture. And the reason for that is that I actually, together with some friends, started a community in Portugal where we bought some land and where I was looking into farming myself. And then I found the amazing potential of regenerative agriculture. I think by now the beautiful thing is that I probably don't need to explain this anymore, right? People know that regenerative agriculture is a solution to many of our issues. And back then I went on a journey of 1 year to visit all the regenerative farmers that I could find. And I found about 60 of them. And I worked with them and I studied with them and I thought, what needs to happen for them in order to do their job well and in order to scale this? And the issues that kept on coming up was always the same things. Everything I'm saying is Europe specific, that's what I should definitely mention. But in Europe, we have a massive issue that farming is sexy. Young people don't go into farming. We have an average age of 58 years in the European Union. And old people usually don't like to change their ways. So that leads to the fact that there's a big issue of a young generation of farmers which can drive this change forwards. The second issue is related to knowledge. There's no agricultural universities which are teaching regenerative agriculture, which is why we started a peer-to-peer learning platform for farmers, where farmers teach each other how to apply regenerative practices and learn from each other. And the third one is related to what Johan was saying, transition finance and payment for ecosystem services. Regenerative farmers are storing carbon in the soil, they're building up biodiversity, they're increasing soil water storage capacity, which would have prevented the floodings that we had in Germany and the Netherlands, for example, last year, but they don't get paid for it. And these people are among the most impressive and amazing people that I've ever met in my life. They're working hard, they're working 7 days a week. They're doing this purely out of passion, and they don't get paid for this at all. Some of our farmers get the same amount of money for regenerative produce than conventional farmers. And they're doing so much more than conventional farmers, which are sometimes emitting carbon into the air, right? 24% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from conventional agriculture. And with regenerative agriculture, we could take this out of the atmosphere and we could actually reverse climate change. But we don't create the incentive system to do that. And that incentive system is what we need to start doing if we want to actually have an effect on climate change.
Speaking about incentives, a new breed of investors are breaking out of traditional sort of perceptions of VCs. And Lena, I'd love to know some of your thoughts on how that impact and ESG and metric is actually sort of coming into the space.
So tomorrow's economy is based on today's investment decisions. And venture capital has a big role to play in that, as is often the first money that young startups take on to scale the growth. And we have set up Planet A Ventures as a new kind of venture fund that really comes, like, we want to scale innovative technologies in climate mitigation, biodiversity protection, water resources, and scale them globally, because the impact will only be big if you have a global reach. And we are very much working with the planetary boundaries, and understand that we can't look at carbon alone very narrowly, but we need to invest into a much broader scope of in nature-based solutions. And we are investing in European very early stage startups. And what is promising is that we have seen tremendous founders coming into this space, like very experienced founders that are very mission driven. And we want to support them with money, obviously, but also with scientific insights. So we want to give science a voice. We feel that science needs to come into our investment decisions. We cannot just throw money out and hope that it will stick, but we need to understand what are the biggest levers of change and how we as investors and financiers can help scale these levers.
I think that's really important. And bringing it back to Ineza, where is it that finance is or isn't available, and what kind of capital are you looking for?
Thank you so much. So in our case, I would say that young people, we don't have access to the capital, whether it's in the public or private sector, because for quite some time, youth are visualized to be included, but as on the checklist, because most of our action, they seem to have fund for aspects such as capacity building or workshops, but when we want concrete action that is going to be meaningful in our community, there's no access, because most of the time we found a limitation in terms of having a lot of the criteria we have to meet, and it's not youth friendly. So, but what we are coming out on this side is to prove ourselves that we can be able to catalyze funding. But the funding that is available for us to access is much more like public fund right now, because in our context now we are having institutions that are ready to take the risk to invest in the youth. So we need more of risk-taking, if I could say, in letting youth be taking action in the ground. So, for example, in our case, we have a project in our country. We've been trying to get the access, and I come from a developing country. This means that we don't have that kind of finance flow available for young people, but we get to have the chance to meet with the institution that are like, let's take the risk and then just prove to the world that now youth can be active stakeholders on the ground. So that's the shift that we want, like taking the risk to invest in young people.
Thank you, Ineza. I think, when it comes to the sort of active stakeholder participation, the role between pledges and commitment can be quite restrictive. So I'm going to hand over to Lubomila to share a little bit about the role that there is between this kind of serious commitment, and maybe a little bit about your journey of leadership too.
So for context of those that don't know, Plan A, we're a software as a service platform for decarbonization, tracking and policy alignment. We enable businesses like BMW, but also other large corporates, to really understand what it tangibly means after you've made the commitment to pay for the transformation that your business needs to go through in order to get to this transformed version that is regenerative, that enables all the stakeholders within your value chain to actually have the possibility to survive, given no business would be able to go on forward if they don't really spend time on understanding the value of sustainability. In the context of pledges, I think last year we saw an extensive amount of pledges being made by governments, by different businesses, and what came out of this in our context was 3 types of businesses. Ones were those that made the pledges but were mainly focused on ticking off the box. They wanted to be perceived as sustainable, but really didn't have the will to go on this transformative journey and really go into the detail of understanding on how it's possible for them to survive in the next 30 years because of short-term thinking and because of, I think, lack of understanding of the value of really preparing yourself for all these crises that in any case are unfolding all the time. The second type of business, which is the most common one, is those that want to go on a transformative journey but are not necessarily clear on how they can do this, but are starting to kick off a lot of initiatives. Maybe this is on a departmental level, differences between the old way of doing it, moving to a sustainable one, but not necessarily across the whole organization. And those that are really the regenerative ones, the ones that we want to see more of, and eventually we'll see basically being every single business on this planet, are the third version. The third type are those that really have understood that their business model, as it looks today, reliant on the economic model that is focused on KPIs like gross profits and margins and GDP, is essentially invalid. It was extensively explained, and I think all of us know about the work that has been done between Club of Rome and Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, that we just have an assessment of our economy that is looking into money as the only currency. But that doesn't account for all the KPIs that actually make money exist. And extending the negative impact on the planet that unfortunately even today we can confirm is not where it has to be, and it's not with the focus on really acting to the level of crisis that we're experiencing, essentially has led these businesses to understand that they need to be at the forefront. What these businesses do that is heavily different than all the other types, even though they're a minority, is that they're activating every single piece of their value chain. They're working with their suppliers, they're working with their employees, they're working with their other stakeholders, educating them on why this matters, giving them money to transform, and essentially not sparing any time and resources to get to a model where they know they'll be able to survive with. I think we're still far away, and I think we should not fool ourselves that we have gotten to a place where the change has happened. We're just kicking it off.
I think that's so powerful. Sandrine, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that and also a few key reflections to bring back some reality into the room, because I think it's really important. And that point is so fundamental, because not only are we seeing some incredible work, especially the non-state actors who have come to this conference and previous COPs since Paris and have really shown that they are starting to translate the pledges into action. But it's the scale that lacks. It's the understanding that we're still living within the same systems that are driving the profit motive, the short-term political decision-making. And within that context, and I am flabbergasted that no one is talking about the compound effects of COVID, climate, and conflict. We are now in a new normal. The new normal is you are in continuous chaos when you have to plan and innovate. New innovation has to be flexible. It needs to actually build on existing knowledge, hence the conversations that I've had with most of the African leaders who have said, please, can you stop telling us what to do and listen to what we understand is best, not only for our country, but for our land. Because our people have been working the land and understand the land much better than you do. How do we bring in real different types and sources of knowledge into innovation? Now, where is the good news? Some of the good news comes from the fact that even, for example, at the European level, where I chair a new, very important working group in research and innovation, which is looking at the economic and societal impacts of research innovation. And Kirsten is actually part of that group, and so many incredible thought leaders across Europe. Why is it important that we have that group? Because we're now talking about transformation in crisis. And we're trying to figure out what does that look like to innovate so that you don't have knee-jerk reactions to conflict, which bring you back rather than forward.
So we're going to scale up this conversation to the audience as well. There's going to be 3 groups. I can only imagine they're dying to share what they're already working on and how they're going to integrate all this inspiration from over here to over there. So 3 groups, 1 over here, 1 in the middle, 1 on the right. 2 speakers each, please. 2 over here, 2 in the middle,
Okay.
2 over the right. You got 10 minutes. Organize yourselves.
And what are we doing?
So we're going to ask you, right now, we're scaling up the conversation. You've all been listening so attentively, so grateful. And we're going to ask you how you're integrating this conversation into your lives. We want to know, how are you integrating this? Let's go.
Okay.
So, darlings, I'm sure you've had a great time, and I can only imagine that you've got so many different points to share. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to start with this group. I am so sure that you had some wonderful things, and I want to know the answer to one question. What was missing? What was missing? What was missing from the conversation?
What was missing? I mean, what we were talking about is that there's a need to have a connection again between the farmers and the food that we're eating, and actually people which are eating that food in the end. And something like a map could be nice, because the question came up, how can we actually find regenerative farms? So what could be an interesting thing is to have a map where you can see directly what are regenerative farms in my area, and how can I get from them so that I can start rebuilding that connection.
I also like that. Where's the next group? Is over here in the middle somewhere. Starting my regenerative journey to the center of the room. So, question. Over here, what was missing?
What was missing? I think we were a bit too late, but we missed...
No problem, no problem. Moving on shortly to over here. Sorry, darling.
Hello. May I?
Okay, Mark.
Tia,
Oh!
for our group.
Oh, you are? You're there. Great. Thank you so much. Stand up, everyone, so that I know that you were hit representing.
So we spoke extensively about the necessity to involve all stakeholders in a collaborative process for redefining value and decision making, empowering local communities, but also with the focus on the regenerative economy, where science is at the core, and also the value that we essentially extract from nature is put back into nature.
Were there
Thank
any
you.
more? Any more comments that anybody would like to make? We're going to be closing off now, but just want to make sure that everyone is ready for the next bit. So, Maya is going to be sharing a little bit about the Respond Accelerator, which we'd love to have you join.
Okay, can I have your attention again for just 2 minutes? We're closing off the session. Just very briefly, sorry. Sandrine, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, just very shortly. My name is Maya. I'm from the BMW Foundation. I'm incredibly happy to have you all here. Amazing panel. Thank you so much for the contribution. Also in the smaller groups, thank you so much. I hope you can continue the conversation, because what we do at the BMW Foundation is inspire responsive leadership, and we really would like to take away what you've heard and reflect on what it means for your own business and your innovation. Within the foundation, we have a program for entrepreneurs specifically, which is called Respond, and you see the logo up there. Respond, you might have wondered what it is. It's a program for entrepreneurs, for impact-driven entrepreneurs, such as Phillippe, such as Lubomila, and VG is also here from our cohort. And I just encourage you all to also check out our webpage. You will find a lot of work about regenerative economy, because we really want to drive leadership in the sense that we want to understand what was discussed here, and we want to bring it from a very theoretical discussion to something that is approachable to all of us in our businesses. So I invite you all to
take a picture of the QR code.
It's the other one.
Thank you all very, very much. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm sure you've got lots and lots of stories, so don't forget to @Instagram us. And I'm sure there's going to be so many more discussions outside as well. There's a few nibbles on the counter, so help yourself to that. Just in case anyone missed the introduction, my name is Tia. Somebody actually came up and said, "Who are you?" I was like, "Oh, I'm Tia, part of Replenish Earth. We're launching a net positive course, so on our Instagram there is a bio link. Download it, do it for free. See you outside. Want to make sure that the space is clear for the next session. Love you all, bye."